The blood dripping from her cracked knuckles into the washboard water turned it pink, but Sarah Mitchell kept scrubbing because Mrs. Henderson paid $2 a week, and that was the difference between eating and starving in Prescott, Arizona territory in the summer of 1884. Cole Brennan had ridden into town that morning with dust coating his dark hair and a weariness in his bones that came from running a cattle ranch alone for 3 years since his father died. He needed supplies, a decent meal, and maybe a whiskey to wash down the loneliness that had become his constant companion. What he did not expect was to see a young woman hunched over a wooden washtub behind the boarding house, her hands raw and bleeding as she scrubbed at stubborn stains on someone else's linens. He had dismounted from his bay gelding and tied the reins to the hitching post, intending to walk straight into the general store, but something about the determination in her posture made him pause. She could not have been more than 22 or 23, with dark blonde hair pulled back in a braid that had come loose in places, and a simple calico dress that had been mended so many times it was hard to tell what the original pattern had been. Her face was turned down, focused on her work, and she did not notice him watching. Then she lifted one hand to push a strand of hair from her forehead, and Cole saw the blood clearly. Deep cracks in her skin wept red, and her fingertips were swollen and raw. She winced as she plunged her hands back into the soapy water, but she did not stop working. Cole found himself walking toward her before he made a conscious decision to do so. His boots crunched on the dry earth, and she looked up with a start, her green eyes wide with surprise, and something that might have been fear. Women working alone often had reason to be wary of strange men approaching. "Ma'am," he said, touching the brim of his hat, "I do not mean to disturb you, but your hands are bleeding pretty badly." Sarah looked down at her hands as if she had not noticed, though of course she had. The pain was constant, a burning throb that made sleep difficult and work nearly unbearable. But work was all she had. "I am fine, thank you," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "Just honest work." "Honest work should not cost you your skin," Cole replied. He crouched down beside the washtub, studying her hands more closely. The cracks went deep, and he could see older scars beneath the fresh wounds. This was not a new problem. "How long have you been doing this?" 6 months, Sarah said. She did not know why she was answering this stranger's questions, except that there was something in his brown eyes that seemed genuinely concerned rather than merely curious. "Since I came to Prescott." 6 months of this, Cole said, more to himself than to her. He straightened up, making a decision that he would not fully understand until much later. "What is your name?" "Sarah Mitchell." "Miss Mitchell, I am Cole Brennan. I run a cattle ranch about 10 miles west of here. I have been trying to manage it alone since my father passed, and I am making a mess of it. The books are a disaster. The supply orders are always wrong. The hands do not know whether they are supposed to be mending fence or moving cattle because I cannot keep track of what needs doing when. I need someone to help me run the place, someone with organization and sense." Sarah stared at him. "Sir, I do not understand." "I am offering you a job," Cole said. "Managing my ranch. You would handle the accounts, the supply orders, the scheduling, the household. I would pay you $15 a month plus room and board. You would have your own quarters in the main house, separate and private, and you would not have to destroy your hands washing other people's clothes. $15 a month. Sarah could barely comprehend the sum. That was more than she made in 2 months of laundry work, and with room and board included, she could actually save money. But it seemed too good to be true, and in her experience, things that seemed too good to be true usually were. "Why would you offer this to me?" she asked. "You do not know me. You do not know if I can even read or write. Can you?" "Yes, my father was a schoolteacher back in Missouri. He made sure I had an education." "Then you are already more qualified than half the people I could hire," Cole said. "As for why I am offering it to you, I suppose it is because I saw your hands and I thought about how my mother used to say you could tell a lot about a person by watching how they work. You were putting everything you had into that washing, even though it was hurting you. That tells me you are not afraid of hard work and you do not give up easy. Those are the qualities I need." Sarah looked down at the half-washed linens in the tub, then back at Cole Brennan. He was tall and lean, with the sun-weathered skin of someone who spent most of his time outdoors. His clothes were worn but clean, and his hat had seen better days. He did not look like a man with money to throw around, which somehow made the offer more believable. He looked like someone who genuinely needed help. I would need to give Mrs. Henderson notice, Sarah said slowly. She depends on me for the laundry. Give her a week's notice, Cole said. I can wait that long. I have been muddling through for 3 years. Another week will not kill me. When can you start after that? I suppose I could start the following Monday. Monday it is. Cole pulled a small leather pouch from his pocket and counted out 3 silver dollars. This is an advance, so you can afford to take care of those hands before you start work. Get some salve from the doctor and maybe some gloves. I need you in working condition, not crippled. Sarah took the money with trembling fingers. $3, just given to her like it was nothing. She had been in Prescott for 6 months, barely surviving, and now this stranger was offering her a way out. Thank you, she whispered. You do not know what this means to me. I think I have an idea, Cole said. He smiled for the first time, and it transformed his serious face into something warmer. I will come back to town next Monday morning. Be ready at dawn and bring whatever belongings you have. It is about an hour's ride to the ranch. He tipped his hat to her again and walked back to his horse, leaving Sarah sitting beside the wash tub with 3 silver dollars clutched in her damaged hands and the first spark of hope she had felt in months. The next week passed in a blur of nervous anticipation. Sarah gave her notice to Mrs. Henderson, who was displeased but could not argue since she had no legal claim on Sarah's labor. Sarah used one of the silver dollars to visit the doctor, who tisked over her hands and gave her a tin of lanolin salve and instructions to wear gloves whenever possible. She spent another $1 on a pair of simple leather gloves and some fabric to make a new dress, something more suitable for working in a ranch house than her worn calico. The third $1 she kept, tucked away in the small cloth bag that held all her worldly savings, which now amounted to nearly $5. She owned very little. Her clothes fit in a single carpet bag, along with her mother's Bible, her father's pocket watch, and a daguerreotype of her parents taken before they died of influenza 7 years ago. She was 23 years old, alone in the world, and about to go live on a ranch with a man she had spoken to for perhaps 10 minutes. It should have terrified her. Instead, she felt a strange sense of calm, as if some part of her recognized that this was the right path, even if she could not explain why. Monday morning came cool and clear, the summer heat not yet risen with the sun. Sarah was waiting in front of the boarding house with her carpet bag when Cole rode up, leading a gentle-looking sorrel mare. I figured you would need a horse, he said, dismounting. This is Rosie. She is old and calm, good for someone who might not have ridden much. I can ride, Sarah said. My father kept horses back in Missouri. Even better. Cole helped her secure her bag to the saddle, then gave her a hand up. She settled into the saddle with an ease that confirmed her words, and they set off westward into the rising sun. The ride gave Sarah her first real chance to observe Cole Brennan. He sat his horse with the relaxed confidence of someone who had been riding since childhood, but there was a tension in his shoulders that spoke of the weight he carried. He was perhaps 26 or 27, she guessed, with the kind of face that would have been handsome if it were not so marked by exhaustion and worry. Tell me about your ranch, Sarah said after they had ridden in silence for a while. It is called the Double B for Brennan brothers, though there is only one brother now, Cole said. My father and uncle started it 30 years ago, back when this was all still wild territory. My uncle died in a riding accident when I was 10, and my mother passed 2 years after that. It was just my father and me for a long time. We ran about 500 head of cattle, had 6 hands working for us during the busy seasons. It was a good operation. And now? Now it is just me and 3 hands who stayed on, out of loyalty to my father's memory more than any confidence in my abilities, Cole said. There was no self-pity in his voice, just honest assessment. I am a good cattleman. I know the land, I know the animals. I can handle a rope and a branding iron and fix most things that break. But I am no good at the managing part, the planning and organizing and keeping track of details. My father handled all that, and when he died, I realized I had no idea how he kept it all straight. I have been stumbling along for 3 years, and the ranch is suffering for it. What happened to your father? Sarah asked gently. Pneumonia. Came on fast in the winter of '81. He was gone within a week. Cole's voice was flat, but Sarah could hear the grief beneath it. I was not ready to run the place alone. I am still not ready, truth be told. That is why I need you. They rode on, and the landscape gradually changed from the scrub and red rock near Prescott to rolling grassland dotted with cattle. Sarah saw the double B brand on the animals they passed, a pair of interlocking Bs that was simple but distinctive. The cattle looked healthy, she noted, and the fences they passed seemed to be in good repair. Whatever Cole thought about his failings, he was clearly taking care of the basics. The ranch house came into view as they topped a low rise, and Sarah felt her breath catch. It was larger than she had expected, a sprawling adobe structure with a wide front porch and multiple outbuildings scattered around it. Cottonwood trees provided shade near the house, and she could see a vegetable garden that had gone somewhat to seed but was still producing. It was not grand, but it was solid and well built, the kind of place that could be a real home. "The main house has 6 rooms, Cole said as they rode into the yard. "My bedroom is on the east side. There are 2 rooms on the west side that have not been used since my mother died. You can take your pick of those. There is a kitchen, a dining room, and a sitting room. The bunkhouse is out back for the hands. We have a barn, a smokehouse, a root cellar, and a workshop." He dismounted and came around to help Sarah down, though she did not strictly need the assistance. His hands on her waist were brief and proper, and he stepped back as soon as her feet touched the ground. 3 men emerged from the barn, clearly curious about the new arrival. Cole introduced them as they approached. Jack Reeves was the oldest, a grizzled man in his 50s with bow legs and shrewd eyes. Tom Martinez was younger, perhaps 30, with the darkly tanned skin that spoke of Mexican heritage. The youngest was Billy Carson, barely 20, with red hair and a quick smile. "Boys, this is Miss Sarah Mitchell," Cole said. "She's going to be managing the ranch operations from now on. That means she will be handling the work schedules, supply orders, and payroll. You will treat her with respect and follow her instructions just as you would mine. Is that clear?" All 3 men nodded, though Sarah could see the skepticism in their eyes. A woman managing a cattle ranch? It was unusual to say the least. She would have to prove herself, she knew. But that was nothing new. She had been proving herself her whole life. "Let me show you the house," Cole said. He grabbed her carpet bag from Rosie's saddle and led the way up the porch steps. The interior of the house was dim and cool after the bright morning sun. Sarah's eyes adjusted to reveal a sitting room that was clean but sparse, with furniture that was sturdy rather than stylish. Everything had a slightly neglected air, as if it were being maintained but not truly cared for. There were no curtains on the windows, no rugs on the floors, no personal touches that would make it feel like a home, rather than just a place to sleep. Cole led her through the dining room, where a large wooden table was covered in papers and account books, then into the kitchen. This room at least showed signs of regular use, with a well-maintained stove and shelves stocked with basic supplies. A door on the far side led to a pantry. "I do most of the cooking, such as it is," Cole admitted. "Beans, bacon, biscuits. Nothing fancy. The boys usually eat in the bunkhouse, but you are welcome to use this kitchen however you like." He showed her the 2 bedrooms on the west side of the house. They were identical, each containing a bed frame, a dresser, a washstand, and a small wardrobe. Sarah chose the one with a window facing south, thinking the light would be better. "I will let you get settled," Cole said, setting her bag on the bed. "Take your time. When you are ready, come find me and I will show you the books and explain what needs doing." He left, closing the door behind him, and Sarah stood alone in her new room. It was plain and simple, but it was hers. She had not had a space of her own since leaving Missouri. For a moment, she simply breathed, letting the reality of her situation sink in. She had a job that paid real money. She had a room with a door that closed. She had a chance to make something of herself. She unpacked her few belongings, hanging her dresses in the wardrobe and setting her parents' daguerreotype on the dresser where she could see it. Then she washed her face and hands in the basin, applied some of the lanolin salve the doctor had given her, and put on her new gloves. Time to get to work. She found Cole in the dining room, staring at the mess of papers on the table with an expression of profound frustration. He looked up when she entered, and some of the tension in his face eased. "Ready to see what you have gotten yourself into?" he asked. "Show me everything," Sarah said. For the next several hours, Cole walked her through the chaos of the ranch's administrative systems, or lack thereof. There were account books with entries that had not been updated in months. There were supply orders that had been filled incorrectly because the handwriting was illegible. There were payroll records that did not match the actual amounts paid. There were schedules for fence mending and cattle rotation that existed only in Cole's head and frequently conflicted with each other. Sarah listened, asked questions, and took notes on a piece of scrap paper. The scope of the disorganization was daunting, but it was not insurmountable. She had helped her father with the administrative side of his teaching work, balancing small budgets and keeping track of multiple students' progress. This was larger in scale, but similar in principle. "The first thing we need to do is get the account books up to date," she said when Cole had finished his explanation. "I need to know exactly how much money is coming in and going out. Then we can tackle the supply orders and the scheduling." "That sounds reasonable," Cole said. He sounded relieved to have someone else taking charge of this aspect of the ranch. "I will need you to sit with me and help me understand the entries for the first few days," Sarah said. "I need to learn what the expenses typically are, when cattle sales happen, things like that. But once I understand the pattern, I should be able to handle it myself." They worked together through the afternoon, Sarah copying information from scraps of paper and receipts into a clean ledger book, Cole explaining the context of various expenses. It was tedious work, but Sarah found it oddly satisfying. There was a logic to it, a structure that appealed to the part of her mind that liked order and clarity. Around dinner time, Cole excused himself to cook. Sarah heard him moving around the kitchen, and soon the smell of frying bacon and baking biscuits filled the house. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she had eaten very little that day. Cole called her to the kitchen, where he had set 2 plates at the small table. The meal was simple, as he had warned, but it was hot and plentiful. Sarah realized she could not remember the last time she had eaten until she was actually full rather than just less hungry. "This is good," she said. "Thank you." "It is adequate," Cole corrected with a slight smile. "My mother was a wonderful cook. Mine is merely food that will keep you alive." "That is more than I have had some days," Sarah admitted. Cole looked at her, really looked at her, and Sarah saw understanding dawn in his eyes. "You were not just poor in Prescott, you were starving." "Some days were harder than others," Sarah said. She did not want his pity, but she would not lie to him either. "I came west thinking there would be more opportunities for a woman alone. I was wrong. Most respectable jobs require references I do not have, and the less respectable jobs require a woman to compromise herself. Laundry was the best I could find." "How did you end up here?" Cole asked. "In Arizona, I mean." "My parents died of influenza when I was 16, Sarah said. "I had an aunt in Kansas City who took me in, but she died 2 years later. Her husband, my uncle by marriage, made it clear that I could stay only if I agreed to certain arrangements. I left instead. I have been moving west ever since, taking whatever work I could find. I thought Prescott might be different, but it was much the same as everywhere else." "I am sorry," Cole said quietly. "That must have been difficult." "It was life," Sarah said. "We all have burdens to carry. You lost your father and inherited a ranch you were not prepared to run. I lost my family and had to make my own way. We do what we must to survive." They finished the meal in companionable silence, and Sarah insisted on washing the dishes. Her hands were much improved after a week of the doctor's salve, and the gloves protected them from the hot water. Cole did not argue, just thanked her and went out to check on the cattle with his men. Sarah cleaned the kitchen, then returned to the dining room and the account books. She worked by lamplight until her eyes grew tired, making steady progress on bringing the records up to date. It was past 10 o'clock when Cole came back inside, dusty and tired. "You should get some rest," he said, seeing her still bent over the ledgers. "This will all still be here tomorrow." "I just want to finish this month's entries," Sarah said. But she was tired, she realized, and her neck ached from hunching over the books. "You are right. Tomorrow is soon enough." They said goodnight, and Sarah retreated to her room. She changed into her nightgown, said her prayers, and climbed into the bed. The mattress was more comfortable than the thin pallet she had slept on at the boarding house, and the night air coming through the open window was cool and fresh. She was asleep within minutes. She woke with the sun and dressed quickly, eager to continue her work. In the kitchen, she found Cole already up, making coffee. "I usually start early," he said. "Hope I did not wake you." "I am used to early mornings," Sarah assured him. She accepted the cup of coffee he poured for her and sipped it gratefully. It was strong and hot, exactly what she needed. They fell into a routine over the following days. Cole would rise early and handle the outdoor work with his men, checking on the cattle, mending fences, managing the day-to-day physical labor of running a ranch. Sarah would spend her mornings working on the accounts and paperwork, gradually bringing order to the chaos. In the afternoons, she would meet with Cole to discuss upcoming needs, schedule the hands' work, and make decisions about supplies and expenses. It quickly became clear to both of them that Sarah had a gift for organization. Within 2 weeks, she had the account books completely up to date and had implemented a system for tracking expenses and income that made it easy to see at a glance how the ranch was performing financially. She had reorganized the supply closets and pantry, created a work schedule for the hands that ensured tasks did not conflict or get forgotten, and even convinced Cole to let her take over the correspondence with buyers and suppliers because her handwriting was more legible than his. The hands remained skeptical at first, but that changed after an incident in the 3rd week. Tom had been assigned to mend a section of fence in the north pasture, but when he arrived, he found that they were short on wire and posts. In the past, this would have meant a wasted trip and a delay of several days while someone rode into town for supplies. But Sarah had implemented an inventory system and had noticed they were running low on fencing materials. She had already placed an order, and the supplies arrived that very afternoon. "Miss Sarah knew we would need that wire before I did," Tom told the other hands that evening. Sarah did not hear the conversation, but Cole did, and he smiled. As summer deepened into August, the ranch ran more smoothly than it had in years. Cattle were moved to fresh pasture on schedule. Fences were mended before they became serious problems. Supplies arrived when needed rather than in random abundance or shortage. The account books showed a profit for the first time since Cole's father died. But beyond the practical improvements, something else was changing. Sarah and Cole were spending several hours together each day, and in those hours, they talked. At first, their conversations focused strictly on ranch business, but gradually they began to share more personal stories. Cole told her about growing up on the ranch, about his father's stern but loving guidance, about his mother's laugh, and her talent for making any house feel like a home. Sarah told him about her childhood in Missouri, about her father's passion for teaching, about the books she had loved to read. They discovered they both enjoyed the same kind of dry humor. They both preferred coffee to tea. They both loved the desert landscape, the vast open spaces and dramatic sunsets. They both valued honesty and hard work above almost everything else. Sarah found herself noticing small things about Cole, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the careful way he treated the horses, always gentle and patient, the respect he showed his men, never asking them to do anything he would not do himself, the way he sometimes looked at her when he thought she was not watching, as if he were trying to figure out a puzzle. Cole found himself thinking about Sarah at odd moments during the day, the way she bit her lip when she was concentrating on the account books, the quiet competence with which she handled every task, the strength she had shown in surviving alone for so long, the sound of her laugh, rare but genuine, when something struck her as funny. Neither of them spoke of these feelings. Sarah, because she was living in Cole's house and working for him, and any romantic overture that went wrong could cost her the security she had only just found. Cole, because he had hired Sarah to do a job, and it would be inappropriate to complicate that relationship with personal feelings. But the unspoken awareness was there, growing stronger each day. In late August, a crisis forced everything into the open. A band of cattle rustlers had been operating in the area, hitting several ranches. Cole and his men had been vigilant, but one night, the rustlers managed to drive off about 50 head from the Double B's south pasture. Cole discovered the theft at dawn and immediately rode out with Jack, Tom, and Billy to track the stolen cattle. Sarah was left alone at the ranch house, and as the day wore on with no word, she found herself unable to concentrate on her work. She kept walking to the window, looking for any sign of the men returning. It was nearly dusk when she heard gunshots in the distance. Her heart seized in her chest, and she ran out onto the porch, straining to see through the gathering darkness. Minutes passed like hours. Then she saw riders approaching, 4 of them, driving cattle ahead of them. Sarah ran to meet them, and relief flooded through her when she saw that all 4 men were accounted for. But then she noticed that Cole was slumped in his saddle, one hand pressed to his side, and there was blood seeping between his fingers. "He got shot," Billy said, his young face pale with worry. "We caught up with the rustlers, and there was a fight. Cole shot one of them, and the others ran off. We got the cattle back, but Cole took a bullet." Sarah did not hesitate. "Get him into the house. Tom, ride for the doctor and Prescott. Billy, Jack, help me get him inside." They half-carried Cole into the house and laid him on his bed. Sarah lit lamps to see by, then carefully pulled his shirt away from the wound. The bullet had caught him in the left side, just above his hip. It was bleeding freely, but when she examined it as carefully as she dared, she did not think it had hit anything vital. "The bullet went clean through," Cole said through gritted teeth. "I can feel the exit wound in my back." "That is good," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice calm, even though her hands were shaking. "It means we do not have to dig it out, but we need to stop the bleeding and clean the wound." She sent Billy to heat water and bring clean cloths. She found a bottle of whiskey in the kitchen and brought it back to the bedroom. Cole looked at it and managed a weak smile. "For the pain?" he asked. "For cleaning the wound," Sarah said. "Though you can drink some first if you want." He took a long swallow, then another, before handing the bottle back to her. Sarah took a deep breath, then poured the whiskey directly onto the wound. Cole made a sound that was somewhere between a curse and a shout, his body going rigid with pain. Sarah pressed clean cloths to both the entry and exit wounds, applying pressure to slow the bleeding. It seemed to take forever, but gradually the flow decreased to a slow seep. Billy arrived with hot water, and Sarah cleaned the wound as thoroughly as she dared, then bandaged it with strips of clean linen. By the time she finished, Cole was pale and sweating, but his breathing was steady. "You should rest," Sarah said. "The doctor will be here in a few hours." "Stay," Cole said, catching her hand. "Please, just for a bit." Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, still holding his hand. His grip was weak, but his eyes were intense as they looked into hers. "I was worried," she admitted, "when I heard the gunshots and did not know if you were safe. I am too stubborn to die," Cole said. "My father always said so. But Sarah, if something had happened to me today, I would have regretted not telling you something." "What?" Sarah whispered. "That you have become important to me, more important than you should be, given that you work for me and live in my house. I know it is not appropriate for me to say this, but when I was lying in that dirt with a bullet in me, all I could think was that I might never get another chance to tell you that I care about you. Not just as someone who works for me, but as a woman I have come to admire and respect, and perhaps more than that." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Cole, I feel the same way. I have tried not to, because I did not want to jeopardize what we have built here, but I cannot help it. These past weeks, working beside you, talking with you, I have come to care for you deeply." "Then we are both fools," Cole said, but he was smiling, "falling for each other when it could complicate everything." "Perhaps," Sarah said, "or perhaps we are fortunate to have found each other when we both needed someone to understand us." She leaned down and kissed his forehead, a gentle gesture that conveyed both affection and relief that he was alive. Cole's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear she had not realized had fallen. The doctor arrived 3 hours later, examined Cole's wound, and pronounced Sarah's field treatment to be excellent. He cleaned and rebandaged the injury, left instructions for care, and told Cole he needed to stay in bed for at least a week and avoid strenuous activity for a month. Cole grumbled about the restrictions, but agreed to follow the doctor's orders when Sarah pointed out that pushing himself too hard could lead to infection or worse. She moved a chair into his room and spent that first night dozing fitfully, waking every hour to check on him. Over the following days, Sarah cared for Cole with a tenderness that went beyond duty. She changed his bandages, brought him meals, read to him when he grew bored with resting, and managed the ranch operations without missing a beat. Jack, Tom, and Billy stepped up to handle the physical work, and Sarah coordinated everything from Cole's bedside, bringing him reports and asking for his input on decisions while making it clear that she had things under control. Cole watched her work with growing admiration. She was completely in her element, handling crises with calm efficiency and making decisions that showed both intelligence and good judgment. He realized that she did not just help him run the ranch anymore. She was running it and doing it better than he ever had alone. A week after the shooting, the sheriff came out from Prescott to take Cole's statement about the rustlers. He reported that the man Cole had shot had survived and was in custody and had identified his accomplices. All 3 would be tried for cattle rustling, which in Arizona territory was a serious crime that often resulted in prison time or hanging. "You did the territory a service running those men down," the sheriff said. "They had been terrorizing ranchers for months." After the sheriff left, Cole got out of bed over Sarah's protests and walked slowly into the dining room. He sat at the table, still moving carefully but clearly on the mend. "I am going mad lying in that bed," he said. "I need to at least sit somewhere different." "As long as you do not overdo it," Sarah said. She had been working on the account books, and now she closed the ledger and looked at him seriously. "Cole, I have been thinking about something, and I need to discuss it with you." "What is it?" "The ranch is doing well financially, better than it has in years according to the records. We are showing a good profit, the cattle are healthy, and all our systems are running smoothly, but we could do even better." "I am listening," Cole said. "We are running about 500 head of cattle on land that could support 700 or more. If we increase the herd size, we could significantly increase our profits. I have been looking at the numbers, and we could afford to buy another 200 head and still have enough capital to get through the winter." Cole considered this. "You are right that we have the land, and it would make sense to expand while cattle prices are good, but managing a larger herd means we would need at least 2 more hands, maybe 3. "I have calculated that as well," Sarah said. "Even with the additional wages, we would still come out ahead. And there is something else. I have been corresponding with a buyer in California who is interested in a steady supply of beef. He is willing to pay a premium for reliable delivery. If we can commit to providing a certain number of cattle per quarter, we could establish a contract that would give us financial stability and predictable income." Cole stared at her. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since I got the books in order and could see the full picture of our finances," Sarah admitted. "I wanted to wait for the right time to present it to you. But after the shooting, I realized that we should not wait. Life is uncertain. We should build on what we have while we can." "You are absolutely right," Cole said. He reached across the table and took her hand. "Sarah, you are not just managing the ranch at this point. You are envisioning its future and making plans to get us there. That is a partner's role, not an employee's." "What are you saying?" Sarah asked, though her heart was beating faster. "I am saying that I want you to be my partner in this ranch. Not just someone who works for me, but someone who shares ownership and decision-making. We could draw up papers making you a co-owner. You have already proven that you are essential to the Double B's success." Sarah was stunned. "Cole, that is incredibly generous, but I cannot simply accept ownership of half your ranch. You inherited this from your father. It is your legacy. And I am choosing to share it with someone who has helped me preserve and improve that legacy," Cole said. "Someone I trust completely, someone I love." The last words hung in the air between them. Sarah felt her breath catch. "You love me?" she whispered. "I do," Cole said simply. "I think I started falling in love with you the day I saw you with your hands bleeding but still working, still refusing to give up. I fell deeper every day as I watched you bring order to my chaos and turn the Double B into the kind of operation my father always hoped it would be. And I fell completely when you cared for me after I was shot, not because it was your job, but because you genuinely cared whether I lived or died." Tears were streaming down Sarah's face now. "I love you too. I have been so afraid to say it, afraid that it would ruin everything we have built. But I love you, Cole Brennan. I love your integrity and your kindness and your determination. I love the way you treat your men with respect and your animals with care. I love the way you look at the land like it is something sacred. I love you." Cole stood up, moving more quickly than he should have given his injury, and pulled Sarah into his arms. He kissed her, and it was like coming home after a long journey. Sarah wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back, with all the feelings she had been holding inside for months. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "Be my partner in all things, not just the ranch. I know it is fast, but I also know that I do not want to spend another day without you knowing that you are mine and I am yours." "Yes," Sarah said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." They made plans quickly because neither of them saw any point in waiting. Cole had to finish recovering from his injury, but as soon as the doctor cleared him for normal activity, they would ride into Prescott and be married by the local minister. In the meantime, there was much to do. First, Cole had a lawyer draw up papers making Sarah a co-owner of the Double B. She protested that this should wait until after the wedding, but Cole insisted. "If something happens to me, I want you protected," he said. "This ranch is as much yours as mine, regardless of whether we have had a ceremony." The papers were signed in early September, making Sarah Mitchell a legal owner of the Double B Ranch. It was a strange feeling, going from having nothing to owning half of a thriving cattle operation. But Sarah did not take the responsibility lightly. She immediately implemented her plan to expand the herd, purchasing 200 healthy cattle from a rancher who was selling out and moving back east. She also hired 2 additional hands, carefully choosing men who came with good references and solid work ethics. By mid-September, Cole was fully healed, and they set a date for the wedding. They would be married on the last Saturday of the month, a simple ceremony in the Prescott church, followed by a meal for the ranch hands and a few friends Cole had in town. Sarah made herself a new dress for the occasion, a simple but elegant creation in deep blue fabric that she purchased with money from her first month's profit sharing from the ranch. She also bought a suit for Cole, insisting that he should look the part of a successful rancher. The day of the wedding dawned clear and beautiful, with the September heat giving way to the first hints of autumn coolness. Sarah dressed carefully in her new gown, her hands steady as she pinned up her hair. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked healthy, with color in her cheeks and a light in her eyes that had been missing for years. She looked happy. Cole waited for her at the church, wearing his new suit and looking both nervous and excited. When Sarah walked down the aisle on Jack's arm, for she had no father to give her away, and Jack had volunteered for the honor, Cole's face broke into a smile that made Sarah's heart soar. The ceremony was simple and brief. They exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other for as long as they both lived. Cole slipped a gold band onto Sarah's finger, and she did the same for him. The minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Cole kissed her with a tenderness that made several of the women in attendance dab at their eyes. The celebration afterward was warm and genuine. Jack, Tom, Billy, and the 2 new hands toasted the couple and wished them happiness. The minister and his wife offered their blessings. The owner of the general store, who had become friendly with Sarah during her many supply runs, gave them a beautiful quilt for their bed. As the sun set, Cole and Sarah rode back to the ranch, side by side on their horses. They were married now, legally and officially, partners in life as well as business. The future stretched out before them, full of possibility. That night, they consummated their marriage in Cole's bedroom, which was now their bedroom. Their lovemaking was tender and passionate, a physical expression of the emotional connection they had been building for months. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, they talked about their dreams for the ranch and for their life together. "I want to build something lasting," Cole said. "Not just a successful ranch, but a real legacy, something we can pass on to our children someday." "Children," Sarah said softly. "I like the sound of that." "Do you want children?" Cole asked. "Very much," Sarah said. "I always thought I would be a mother someday, back when I was young and my parents were alive and the future seemed full of ordinary happiness. Then life became about survival, and I stopped thinking about what I wanted. But now, with you, I can imagine it again. A family of our own." "Then we will have one," Cole said, kissing her temple. "However many children we are blessed with, we will raise them to be strong and kind and capable, like their mother. And honorable and hard-working and brave, like their father," Sarah added. The fall passed in a blur of work and happiness. The expanded herd thrived, and Sarah finalized the contract with the California buyer, securing the financial stability she had promised. The ranch hands adjusted to Sarah's new status as co-owner and Cole's wife, and any lingering skepticism about a woman in a position of authority evaporated as they saw the results of her management. Cole and Sarah settled into married life with surprising ease. They worked together during the day, and in the evenings they enjoyed each other's company, talking about the day's events or simply sitting together in comfortable silence. They learned each other's habits and preferences, the small intimacies that make up a shared life. In November, Sarah realized she had missed her monthly courses and felt a flutter of nausea in the mornings. She said nothing at first, not wanting to raise hopes that might be dashed. But when another month passed with the same symptoms, she could no longer deny what her body was telling her. She waited until evening, when she and Cole were alone in the sitting room. He was reading through a catalog of farming equipment, and she was supposedly working on the account books, but her mind was elsewhere. "Cole," she said, setting down her pen, "I have something to tell you." He looked up, immediately attentive to the serious tone in her voice. "What is it?" "I believe I am with child," Sarah said. "I am fairly certain, though I have not seen a doctor yet to confirm it." For a moment, Cole just stared at her. Then a grin spread across his face, transforming him with pure joy. He set aside the catalog and crossed to her, pulling her up from her chair and into his arms. "A baby," he said, wonder in his voice. We are going to have a baby. Are you happy? Sarah asked, though she could see the answer in his face. Happy does not begin to cover it, Cole said. He kissed her deeply, then dropped to his knees and pressed his face against her still flat stomach. Hello in there, little one. Your father is very pleased to make your acquaintance. Sarah laughed, running her fingers through Cole's hair. You are getting ahead of yourself. We have months to go yet. I do not care. I am starting as I mean to go on, letting this child know it is loved and wanted from the very beginning. They rode into Prescott the next week to see the doctor, who confirmed Sarah's pregnancy and estimated that the baby would arrive in early July. Sarah was healthy and strong, he said, and he saw no reason to expect any complications. The winter passed with Sarah working as hard as ever, though Cole tried to convince her to rest more. She would hear none of it, pointing out that women had been having babies since the beginning of time while continuing to work, and she was not so fragile that she needed to be coddled. She did, however, allow him to take over some of the heavier physical tasks around the house, and to be more protective of her when they rode out to check on the cattle. As her pregnancy progressed, Sarah's body changed, her belly growing round with their child. Cole found her even more beautiful, and he told her so frequently, making her blush and smile. They spent their evenings planning for the baby, discussing names, and preparing one of the unused bedrooms as a nursery. Spring came, and with it the busy season of calving and branding. Sarah was too far along in her pregnancy to help with the physical work, but she coordinated everything from the house, ensuring that the hands knew their schedules and that supplies were adequate. The operation ran smoothly, a testament to the systems she had put in place. In late June, as the summer heat began to rise, Sarah felt the first contractions. Cole rode into Prescott at breakneck speed to fetch the doctor and a midwife, and by the time they returned to the ranch, Sarah's labor was well underway. Cole paced the sitting room, while the midwife and doctor attended to Sarah in the bedroom. He could hear her cries of pain, and each one felt like a knife in his heart. Jack sat with him, offering silent support, while Tom and Billy hovered anxiously in the bunkhouse. It was a long labor, lasting through the night and into the early morning. Cole was nearly out of his mind with worry when he finally heard a new sound, the thin, outraged wail of a newborn baby. The midwife emerged from the bedroom, smiling. You have a son, Mr. Brennan, a healthy boy, and your wife came through beautifully. Cole did not wait to hear more. He rushed into the bedroom and found Sarah propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. She looked up at him, with tears streaming down her face. Meet your son, she whispered. Cole approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the baby in Sarah's arms. He was tiny and red-faced, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that were trying to focus on the new world around him. Cole felt his own eyes fill with tears. He is perfect, he said. You are amazing. I love you so much. I love you too, Sarah said. Would you like to hold him? Cole sat carefully on the edge of the bed, and Sarah transferred the baby into his arms. The weight of his son, the feel of that tiny body, the knowledge that he and Sarah had created this new life together, overwhelmed him. He bent his head and wept, tears of joy and gratitude and overwhelming love. They named him James, after Cole's father, with the middle name Thomas after Sarah's father. Little James Brennan was welcomed into the world with all the love two parents could give. The months that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and endless wonder. Sarah recovered quickly from the birth, and within a few weeks she was back to managing the ranch operations, though now she did so with James in a cradle near her desk or sleeping in a sling against her chest. Cole was a devoted father, taking his turn walking the floor with the baby when James was fussy and changing nappies without complaint. The ranch continued to thrive. The contract with the California buyer proved even more profitable than Sarah had projected, and by the end of the year, they had paid off the last of the debts Cole's father had left and had money in the bank. They expanded the herd again and bought more land, gradually growing the Double B into one of the most successful operations in the territory. James grew into a bright, curious toddler with his father's brown eyes and his mother's smile. By the time he was 2, Sarah was pregnant again, and in the spring of 1888, she gave birth to a daughter they named Elizabeth, after Cole's mother. Elizabeth had Sarah's blonde hair and green eyes, and she was calmer than James had been as a baby, content to watch the world with solemn attention. Life on the ranch fell into a rhythm. Cole and Sarah worked together seamlessly, managing both the business and their growing family. Jack retired when he turned 60, and Tom took over as foreman, proving himself capable and trustworthy. Billy married a girl from Prescott and built a small house on ranch land, becoming a permanent part of the Double B family. New hands came and went, but the core of the operation remained stable. In 1890, Arizona Territory was growing and changing, moving closer to eventual statehood. Prescott was expanding, with new businesses and more settlers arriving. The wild lawlessness of the early days was giving way to more established order, though the land itself remained as beautiful and unforgiving as ever. Sarah, now 29, looked back on the 6 years since Cole had found her with her hands bleeding over a wash tub and marveled at how much had changed. She was no longer a desperate woman, barely surviving. She was a co-owner of a successful ranch, a wife to a man she loved deeply, and a mother to 2 wonderful children. She had found not just security, but genuine happiness, the kind she had stopped believing was possible during those dark days of moving from town to town with nothing. Cole, at 32, had fulfilled the promise his father had seen in him. With Sarah's help, he had taken the struggling ranch he inherited and turned it into a thriving enterprise. More importantly, he had built a family and a home filled with love and laughter. The loneliness that had haunted him after his father's death was a distant memory. One evening in late summer, after the children were asleep, Cole and Sarah sat on the porch watching the sun set over the land they had worked so hard to build. Cole held Sarah's hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Do you remember the day we met?" he asked. "How could I forget?" Sarah said. "My hands were bleeding, I was exhausted and hungry, and then a stranger offered me a job that changed my entire life. I knew there was something special about you," Cole said. "I could not have articulated what it was at the time, but I knew I needed you in my life. And I knew you were different from other men I had met," Sarah said. "You looked at me and saw a person with value, not just a desperate woman to be pitied or taken advantage of. You offered me respect and opportunity. You gave me a chance to prove myself." "You did more than prove yourself," Cole said. "You exceeded every hope I had. This ranch, our life, everything we have built together, none of it would exist without you." "We built it together," Sarah corrected. "You had the foundation and the knowledge of the land and the cattle. I just brought organization and planning to what you already knew how to do." "You brought much more than that," Cole said. "You brought hope and partnership and love. You made this house a home. You gave me children to carry on the legacy. You made me happier than I ever imagined I could be." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the contentment that came from being exactly where she was meant to be. "I used to lie awake at night in that boarding house, wondering if I would ever have a real life again, if I would ever have a home and a family and purpose. I had almost given up hoping, and then you appeared, like something out of a fairy tale, and offered me exactly what I needed. Maybe we were meant to find each other," Cole said. "Two people who needed what the other could give." "Maybe," Sarah agreed. "Or maybe we were just fortunate and smart enough to recognize the opportunity when it came." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky. From inside the house, they heard James call out, probably from a dream, and Sarah started to rise. But the call was not repeated, and after a moment she settled back against Cole. "He is growing so fast," she said. "They both are. James is already talking about learning to rope cattle like his father, and Elizabeth is walking now, getting into everything. I want more," Cole said. "More children, I mean, if you do." Sarah smiled. "I think I would like that. A full house, lots of noise and chaos and love." "Just what my mother always wanted," Cole said. "She used to say that a home was not truly alive unless it was filled with children and laughter." "Then we will give her that legacy," Sarah said. "Children who know they are loved, who grow up with the land in their blood and the values we hold dear." The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. In 1891, Sarah gave birth to twin boys, Robert and William, doubling the chaos in the household and stretching both parents to their limits. But they managed with help from a hired girl from Prescott, who came to assist with the housework and childcare. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. They now ran nearly 1,000 head of cattle on land that stretched for miles. Cole had become a respected voice in the territorial ranching community, often consulted on matters of land management and fair practices. Sarah's business acumen was equally recognized, and she was one of the first women to attend the territorial agricultural meetings, where her insights on financial management and contracts were valued even by men who initially balked at her presence. James grew into a responsible boy who took his role as oldest child seriously, helping to watch over his younger siblings. Elizabeth was gentle and artistic, always drawing pictures or making up stories. The twins were bundles of energy, constantly getting into mischief and keeping everyone on their toes. In 1893, Sarah discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the previous ones, leaving her more tired and uncomfortable. Cole worried, but Sarah insisted she was fine, just older and carrying her fifth child. When her time came in early 1894, the labor was long and difficult, and for a few frightening hours, the midwife was concerned. But Sarah was strong, stronger than anyone knew, and she brought another daughter into the world. They named her Catherine, and she was small but healthy, with a fierce determination that manifested even in infancy. Cole looked at his wife, exhausted but triumphant in the bed, and he made a decision. "No more," he said firmly. "5 children is a blessing beyond measure, but I will not risk you again. I love our children, but I love you more, and I need you to stay in this world with me." Sarah was too tired to argue, and in her heart, she agreed. She was 33 years old, and 5 children were plenty. She wanted to enjoy the ones she had, to watch them grow and guide them into adulthood. The late 1890s brought changes to the territory and the nation. The frontier was closing, the wild days of the Old West fading into memory and legend. Arizona was moving closer to statehood, with more schools, better roads, and increasing population. The ranch adapted to these changes, modernizing where it made sense, but holding on to the core values of hard work and respect for the land. James, now a teenager, was learning the business from both parents. He had his father's natural affinity for the cattle and land, but he also had his mother's head for numbers and planning. Cole and Sarah knew the ranch would be in good hands when they eventually passed it on. Elizabeth announced at 15 that she wanted to be a teacher, like her grandfather Mitchell had been. Sarah helped her prepare for the teaching examination, and Elizabeth passed with high marks, beginning to teach at the local school in Prescott while still living at home. The twins, Robert and William, were inseparable, a matched pair who finished each other's sentences and always had each other's backs. They loved the physical work of ranching, the roping and branding and riding, and showed no interest in the business side. That was fine with Cole and Sarah, who believed that each child should follow their own path. Young Catherine, despite being the youngest, had a will of iron and a sharp intelligence. She followed Sarah everywhere, absorbing lessons in management and organization. And by the time she was 8, she could balance the household accounts as well as her mother. In the year 1900, Arizona Territory celebrated the turn of the century, and the Brennan family celebrated along with everyone else. Cole was 40, Sarah was 39, and they had been married for 16 years. Those years had not always been easy, but they had been filled with love and partnership and the satisfaction of building something meaningful together. They threw a party at the ranch for the new century, inviting friends and neighbors and all the hands who had worked for them over the years. There was music and dancing and food, and as midnight approached, Cole pulled Sarah aside. "Remember when I asked you what you wanted back when we first met?" he said. "You never asked me that," Sarah said, confused. "Exactly," Cole said. "I offered you a job without ever asking what you wanted from life. So I am asking now. What do you want, Sarah Brennan?" Sarah looked around at the party, at their children laughing and dancing, at the ranch spread out under the stars, at the man she loved standing before her. "I have everything I want," she said simply. "A home, a family, work that matters, and a partner who loves and respects me. What more could anyone ask for?" "Nothing," Cole said. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her as the crowd counted down to midnight. Absolutely nothing. The early years of the new century brought the family into full maturity. James took on more responsibility for the day-to-day operations of the ranch, allowing Cole and Sarah to step back slightly, though neither of them was ready to fully retire. Elizabeth married a young lawyer from Prescott in 1903, a good man who supported her teaching career and shared her love of books and learning. The twins, now young men in their early 20s, decided they wanted to start their own ranch on land, adjacent to the Double B. Cole and Sarah helped them purchase the property and provided some starter cattle, and Robert and William proved themselves capable ranchers in their own right. Catherine, at 16, announced her intention to go to college in California to study business and economics. It was unusual for a woman, but Cole and Sarah had always encouraged their children to pursue education, and they supported her decision. In 1906, Arizona was still a territory but clearly on the path to statehood. The Brennan Ranch had become one of the most successful in the region, a model of efficient management and sustainable practices. Cole and Sarah were respected members of the community, known for their fair dealings and their generosity. One evening, as they sat on the porch that had seen so many important conversations over the years, Sarah spoke thoughtfully. "Do you ever think about that day at the wash tub?" she asked. "Often," Cole admitted. "I think about how easily we might have missed each other. If I had ridden into town an hour later, or if I had gone straight to the general store instead of walking behind the boarding house, our lives would be completely different." "I think about how close I came to giving up," Sarah said. "I was so tired, so hopeless. Another few months of that life, and I might have done something desperate. But then you appeared, and you saw me. Not the desperate laundress with bleeding hands, but the person I could become if I had a chance." "I saw who you already were," Cole corrected. "You did not become someone new. You just finally had the opportunity to show the world what you were capable of." "We saved each other," Sarah said. "You gave me opportunity and hope, and I gave you partnership and organization. Together, we built something neither of us could have achieved alone." "That is what marriage should be," Cole said. "Not one person saving another, but two people making each other stronger." They sat in silence for a moment, then Sarah laughed softly. "What?" Cole asked. "I was just thinking about what Mrs. Henderson said when I gave my notice from the laundry work. She told me I was making a mistake, that no decent woman went to live on a ranch with a man she barely knew. She said I would come to regret it." "Do you?" Cole asked, though he knew the answer. "Not for a single moment," Sarah said. "Best decision I ever made." In 1912, Arizona finally achieved statehood, becoming the 48th state in the Union. The Brennan family celebrated along with the rest of the new state. Cole was 52, Sarah was 51, and they had 5 grown children and 3 grandchildren, with more on the way. James had married a rancher's daughter and taken over full management of the Double B, proving himself as capable as his parents had hoped. Elizabeth had 2 children and was now the principal of a school in Prescott. The twins' joint ranch was thriving. Catherine had graduated from college and was working in San Francisco for a large import-export company, applying everything her mother had taught her about business to a much larger stage. Cole and Sarah officially retired from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, though they still lived in the main house and were consulted on major decisions. They spent their days enjoying the fruits of their decades of labor, traveling occasionally, visiting their children and grandchildren, and simply enjoying each other's company. They had been married for 28 years, and their love had only deepened with time. They knew each other's thoughts, finished each other's sentences, and could communicate with just a glance. They had weathered hardships together, celebrated triumphs together, and built a legacy that would extend far beyond their own lifetimes. One spring morning in 1915, Sarah woke early and found Cole already up, standing on the porch watching the sunrise. She joined him, slipping her arm through his. "Beautiful morning," she said. "They all are out here," Cole replied. "I never get tired of this view." "Neither do I." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, comfortable and content. They stood like that for a long while, watching the light spread across the land they had worked so hard to build and preserve. "Thank you," Cole said suddenly. "For what?" "For saying yes when I asked you to manage the ranch, for taking a chance on a stranger with a wild proposal, for loving me and building this life with me, for everything." "Thank you for seeing me that day," Sarah said. "For stopping when you saw my hands bleeding, for offering me a chance instead of just walking by, for loving me and respecting me and making me your partner in all things, for giving me a home and a family and a purpose." "Best day of my life, seeing you at that wash tub," Cole said. "Mine too," Sarah agreed. "The day my real life began." They stood together on the porch as the sun climbed higher, warming the cool morning air. In the distance, they could see cattle grazing and hear the sounds of the ranch coming to life. James was already up and working, carrying on the legacy they had built. Their children were happy and successful, living lives of purpose and meaning. The ranch was prosperous and would remain so for generations to come. Sarah looked down at her hands, the hands that had once been cracked and bleeding from washing other people's clothes. They were older now, marked with the lines of age, but they were strong and capable. These hands had kept account books, written contracts, and held her babies. These hands had worked alongside Cole to build something lasting and good. Cole took one of those hands in his own, bringing it to his lips and kissing it gently. "These hands changed my life," he said. "And yours changed mine," Sarah replied. They went back inside to start their day, still hand in hand, still partners in all things, still deeply in love after nearly 3 decades together. The house smelled of coffee and fresh bread, and they could hear James and his wife moving around in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. Life was good. Life was full. Life was exactly what it should be. As the years continued to roll by, Cole and Sarah settled into the rhythms of elder life with grace and gratitude. They watched their grandchildren grow, delighting in each new baby and each milestone achieved. They attended weddings and christenings, celebrations and gatherings, always at the center of the large, loving family they had created. James and his wife ran the Double B with the same combination of practical know-how and careful planning that Cole and Sarah had demonstrated, and the ranch continued to prosper, even as the modern world encroached with automobiles and telephones and all manner of new inventions. In 1920, Sarah turned 59, and Cole threw her a party that brought the entire extended family together. Children and grandchildren came from across Arizona and beyond, filling the ranch house and grounds with laughter and love. As Sarah looked around at all the people who existed because she and Cole had found each other that day in Prescott, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. That evening, after the party had wound down and most of the family had departed to sleep in various locations around the ranch, Cole and Sarah sat on their porch one more time. It had become their ritual, this evening time together, reflecting on the day in their life. 60 years old next year, Cole said. "Never thought I would make it this far." "You will make it many years further," Sarah said confidently. "You are too stubborn to die before you are good and ready." "Maybe," Cole said. "But either way, I want you to know that I have no regrets, not a single one. Every day with you has been a gift." "Even the hard days," Sarah teased, "the days when the cattle got loose or the drought threatened or the children were sick." "Especially those days," Cole said, "because we faced them together and we came through stronger. That is what partnership means, not just sharing the good times, but being there for each other when things get difficult." "We have been blessed," Sarah said, "more blessed than either of us had any right to expect." "We made our own blessings," Cole corrected, "through hard work and faith and love. We built this life together, brick by brick, decision by decision, day by day." Sarah could not argue with that. They had indeed built their life together, and it had been a good one, a very good one. The 1920s brought more changes. Catherine returned from San Francisco with a husband and a young son, ready to settle back in Arizona and apply her business skills closer to home. She began consulting with various ranches and businesses in the state, modernizing their practices and helping them adapt to the post-war world. Elizabeth's children were now adults themselves, with the oldest attending university in Tucson. The twins had expanded their joint operation and were now running one of the largest cattle operations in the state. Every branch of the family tree was thriving. Cole and Sarah, now in their 60s, were beginning to slow down. Cole's joints ached on cold mornings, and Sarah's eyes were not as sharp as they had been, but their minds remained keen, and they continued to offer advice and wisdom to their children and grandchildren. In the summer of 1925, the family gathered at the Double B to celebrate Cole and Sarah's 40th wedding anniversary. 40 years since that simple ceremony in Prescott. 40 years of partnership and love. The celebration was enormous, with family members traveling from across the country to attend. James stood to make a toast, and the crowd fell silent. "My parents," he began, "have shown me what marriage should be. They have shown me what partnership means. They have demonstrated through 40 years of example how to build a life based on mutual respect, hard work, and genuine love. My father found my mother when she had nothing, and he offered her a chance. She took that chance and helped him transform a struggling ranch into one of the most successful operations in Arizona. Together, they built not just a business, but a family and a legacy. They taught us that success is measured not in wealth, but in the lives you touch and the love you share. I am proud to be their son, and I am grateful every day for the example they set." To Cole and Sarah Brennan, 40 years and still going strong. "To Cole and Sarah!" the crowd echoed, raising their glasses. Cole and Sarah stood together, acknowledging the toast with smiles and nods. Then Cole spoke, his voice still strong despite his years. 40 years ago, I made the best decision of my life when I asked Sarah to marry me. Actually, the best decision was several months before that, when I saw her at a wash tub with bleeding hands and offered her a job. Everything good in my life flows from that moment. Sarah, you have been my partner, my confidant, my best friend, and my greatest love. You made me a better man than I would have been alone. You gave me children who honor both of us with their lives. You built a home filled with love and laughter. Thank you for saying yes all those years ago. Thank you for every day since then. I love you more now than I did the day we married, and I will love you until my last breath." There was not a dry eye in the crowd. Sarah, tears streaming down her face, stood on her toes to kiss her husband, and the gathering erupted in applause and cheers. The party continued late into the night, with music and dancing and storytelling. Grandchildren begged for stories about the old days, and Cole and Sarah obliged, recounting tales of the early years when the ranch was struggling, of the cattle rustlers and Cole's injury, of building the business and the family bit by bit. As the night wound down and the younger children were carried to bed, Cole and Sarah found themselves alone on the porch one more time, sitting in the rocking chairs James had made for them as an anniversary gift. 40 years, Sarah mused. It seems like no time at all, and yet, when I think back to who I was before I met you, it feels like several lifetimes. "You were always strong," Cole said. "I did not give you that. I just gave you a place where your strength could shine." "We gave each other what we needed," Sarah said. "That is the secret, I think. Finding someone whose strengths complement yours, whose dreams align with yours, whose heart beats in time with yours." "Then we found the right secret," Cole said, reaching over to take her hand. They rocked gently in their chairs, hands clasped, looking out over the land that had become so much more than just property. It was home. It was legacy. It was the physical manifestation of their love and labor. Cole and Sarah lived many more good years. They saw their youngest grandchildren grow into adults. They celebrated more weddings and welcomed great-grandchildren into the world. They watched as the ranch adapted to changing times, as automobiles replaced horses for many tasks, as electricity came to even the remote areas, as the world transformed around them. Through it all, they remained constants for each other and for their family. The love that had begun that day at the wash tub, that had grown through shared work and common purpose, that had deepened through marriage and children and decades of partnership, never faded. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year. When Cole passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1932 at the age of 72, Sarah mourned deeply, but without regret. They had been given 48 years together, 48 years of love and partnership and building a life that mattered. She held his hand as he took his last breath, and she whispered, "Thank you for everything, for seeing her when she needed to be seen, for loving her when she needed to be loved, for being her partner in all things." Sarah lived another 5 years, staying in the ranch house and remaining involved in the family business until the end. She was surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who loved her dearly and understood the foundation she and Cole had built. When she passed away in 1937 at the age of 76, her funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives she had touched. She was buried next to Cole on a hill overlooking the Double B, and their shared headstone read simply, "Sarah and Cole Brennan, partners in life and love, founders of a legacy." The ranch continued for generations after them, passed down through the family, each new generation adding to what Cole and Sarah had started. The story of how they met, of the cowboy who saw a woman with bleeding hands and offered her not just a job, but a chance at a real life, became family legend, told and retold to each new child born into the Brennan line. It was a story about seeing value in people when others overlooked them. It was a story about taking chances and working hard and building something meaningful together. It was a story about partnership and respect and love that lasted through decades and trials and all the complexities of life. Most of all, it was a story about how one moment of compassion, one decision to stop and help when it would have been easier to walk by, can change everything. Cole saw Sarah's bleeding hands and offered her a job managing his ranch. In doing so, he set in motion a love story that would span nearly half a century and create a legacy that would endure for generations. They had found each other when they both needed someone to believe in them, and they had built a life that honored both of them. It was a life of hard work and deep love, of challenges overcome and dreams achieved, of family gathered and legacy established. It was, by any measure, a life well lived. And it all began the day the cowboy saw her hands bleeding from washing clothes and hired her to manage his ranch instead.